you kind of need that sort of cheerleading squad to tell you, like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you can demand, honestly, like, demand what you're worth and negotiate for yourself and not feel like you're not entitled to it.
Welcome to Hey Awesome Girl with Tivi Jones.
Every week, we interview amazing boss babes in tech, medicine, law, entrepreneurship, entertainment, parenting, and more. About their lives, their goals, their why, in order to discover how every day they're working to add more pleasure, ease, and abundance in their orbit. Ooh, hold up. We gotta unpack that. This show is part business advice, part life coaching, part real talk with girlfriends. See how she be coaching me? If you're looking for a show that's real and relatable, but also inspiring at the same time, this is the one for you.
I'm your host, Tivi Jones. I'm founder and CEO of the creative agency Hey Awesome Girl. I'm dog mom to Miss Olivia, the cutest little dog on the planet. And I'm someone who wants to learn how to speak fluent Spanish, Japanese, French, and Italian before I die. Right now, I only speak Spanish. And only a little bit, to be honest. In my professional life, I've grown businesses, I've grown audiences, I've managed million-dollar budgets and led large marketing teams, generating seven-figure contracts for my clients. On this show, I talk to other boss babes as we figure out how to add more pleasure, ease, and abundance into our lives. Today, you'll meet Liana Rebollo, who is Senior Counsel of Corporate Governance and Securities at Wells Fargo. We talk a lot about working in corporate America, a lot about being an ally, being a mentor, self-care, all of the things. It's a really great episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Liana.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited / nervous, but it's all good.
Also, the nerve of you for like cracking a joke right when I hit record. So I'm
That's
like
our
laughing
relationship. Inappropriate humor at inappropriate times is where we live.
Is it inappropriate times or is it highly appropriate times?
True.
I mean, for folks who aren't familiar with you, tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Who I am and what I do. My name is Liana. I have known Tivi for going on 20 years.
Oh my God. More than half our lives, okay?
Gosh, yeah, over half our lives, exactly. I'm an attorney in Charlotte. I'm a corporate attorney in Charlotte. Double Tar Heel, where I met Tivi. Crazy to say, mom of two, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and mom of 2 dogs now, both rescues. One is Olivia's boyfriend, Atlas, and we're fostering a dog. We're fostering Zeus. So
I didn't know about Zeus.
Yeah, we're fostering Zeus. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Keep me posted. That's my buddy.
They're actually in here. You can't hear them. They're taking naps in this room.
What kind of dog is Zeus? I'm so off track now. I'm like stuck on
dog. He's a pit too. He's a pit also. Much bigger than Atlas, which is so funny. But Atlas bosses him around.
That's usually how it is. Yep.
Of course.
Awesome. Let's talk about your career a little bit. How did you get started and how has it developed?
So high school, I've always, you know how it is in IB, you excel at certain things and pour into it. And I've always just been drawn to, you know, history and English and language and literature. And I started thinking about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to major in at Carolina. And then that's when I started thinking about a career in law. At first I thought, I was like, I'm a badass, I can litigate. But as I, you know, researched, and particularly when I moved to New York, and you remember this, when I joined a law firm in New York and I was a paralegal right out of college, quickly I learned, I was like, oh, I like the corporate world. I like mergers, acquisitions, and deals, and the fast pace of that. So I took a break. Well, I wouldn't call it a break. I took a job in New York as a paralegal right after college, spent 2 years in New York. And that kind of solidified what I wanted to do. So that's when I took the LSAT and, really asked some questions about people who were practicing corporate law at the time. And I knew going into it that it was going to be a demanding, fast paced, and I was up to that challenge. Little did I know how much that would impact like me personally and like really challenge what I view as valuable in terms of my career. So, as an immigrant, right, and at first generation sort of American, our parents were like, you got to be a doctor or a lawyer. Pick one. And I was like, well, I'm not cutting anybody open, so let me go into law. And I've always excelled academically, so even getting into law school was just sort of a box to check for me, which I did. And truth be told, my focus was be a lawyer and make a lot of money. I wasn't really concerned about anything else. I was like, I have to help my family out, tick off the boxes of what it means to be successful. Particularly for someone who came here at 11 years old from the Philippines, developing country. There's a certain element of like, I have to prove myself and I have to earn my keep. And, this is what success looks like. And I have to achieve it by a certain age. And so that's how I sort of got into it. And it wasn't until I was practicing as an attorney, starting a family, that I was like, oh, this might not fit my personality and like where I want my life to be. And that was a hard pill to swallow because you hold on to your idea of success.
Right.
And when you go into a prestigious law firm, success is I'm going to make partner in 7 years. And I just wasn't going down that track. And I had to really think about, what I wanted to accomplish, but also my happiness. I mean, the firm I was at was great, but the last year and a half I was there, I was like miserable. So I was having Liam, I was pregnant, and I was like, okay, I need to change the definition of what is successful for myself. And so I decided to go in-house. So now I work for a bank. The hours are much, much better. I initially did have to take a pay cut, and that was a sacrifice that I had to make. And it was scary because I was used to a certain kind of lifestyle, and I had an idea of very much like my idea of what success was tied to money and like how much I was making. And so to think like, oh, I'm taking a huge pay cut, like, what does that mean? But ultimately, to be honest with you, and this is why I tell people, like, you have to listen to your gut and listen to what your instincts are telling you and what your body is telling you. Like, I'm in it now for 5 years at Wells Fargo, and I'm happier than I've ever been in terms of my career. I'm compensated the way I feel I should be. I'm valued by my team, and I like the work that I do. It took a while to get there, but the sacrifice that I made by listening to like my gut ultimately paid off. So career-wise, I'm very happy. It didn't look that way 3-4 years ago. It's scary to leave a place of employment and try to find a job while you're pregnant. That's the reality of, the United States. And like, I didn't have full paid maternity leave because I was a new employee, and I had to figure that out financially. What does that look like? And it's a shame because, we shouldn't have to make decisions based on whether or not I'm pregnant and whether or not I'm going to be pregnant. That should not be such a large variable, but that's just the reality of it. And the way I went around that was negotiating, quite frankly, and saying, look, I'm taking a pay cut, but I need you to give me a signing bonus. because I'm going to go on leave. And so, those are the things that you kind of have to think about. And for the legal field, it's tough. It's tough for women. Women of color make up, I think, a single-digit percentage of the American Bar Association. So wherever we are, we're always going to be the only one or one of a few. And so there's this certain amount of like, I don't want to rock the boat, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to join a new company and then go on maternity leave in like 5 months. And it's the language that we have around, making ourselves fit versus the other way around. Like, I have value to offer. And all of that and the confidence I got from navigating those circumstances, like the advice that I got from other women of color, women who are 3, 5, 7 years ahead of me in their career, were like invaluable, because you kind of need that sort of cheerleading squad to tell you like it's gonna be okay. Like you can demand, honestly, like demand what you're worth and negotiate for yourself and not feel like you're not entitled to it.
Yeah. I want to dig into that a little bit. You said a lot of things that really stood out to me. One, mentioning that early on you were like, oh, I'm a badass, I could do litigation. I still think that's true, but I also feel you.
I am a Pisces. I am very, very sensitive to conflict. Everything. I feel everything.
You sensitive to conflict?
I have a good poker face, but I feel it all in here. It's all in here.
I feel you. Okay. So I feel you on that. You sensitive to it, but you do it anyway.
Yes, that is so much, but that is so much like our lives. Like we power through, for the good and the bad. Sometimes we're not supposed to be powering through and we do it, but
Okay. I also want to dig into, you said a lot of really great things. I was trying to like not type too loud. I was gonna ask about how did you feel comfortable negotiating? I always tell women who I work with or consult with or talk to, advise, like always negotiate. Even people on my team.
Yes.
I'm like, always negotiate. I might not be able to do it for you.
Dog walkers, I negotiate with. I negotiate.
Didn't you just buy like a piece of exercise equipment?
I sure
and you were talking about
my way down. I said, listen.
Like, how did you become comfortable doing that?
First of all, it's not comfortable. It's just not. It's not going to be comfortable.
There you go. Take that off the table.
Yeah, just don't look for the comfort. You just have to step into it. Step into the discomfort. And to be honest with you, and this might be a sign of like where I need to grow. So much of the impetus for my negotiating and getting into uncomfortable situations, even though I don't want to be, is fueled by anger, by how dare you, like and I just roll with it. Obviously we have to stay professional and we have to stay articulate and we have to be able to communicate clearly what our needs are and what we offer for that value. But honestly, the situations where I felt like I was pushed into that discomfort zone was when somebody was like, I'm a lowball you because I can. And I know that women don't negotiate. And I know that, I can get away with it. And it was this primal instinct in me to be like, absolutely not. And I think we need to lean into that. When your gut and your body is having a visceral reaction to how somebody's treating you, you need to listen to it.
Yeah.
I think where I had to grow was how to communicate it. Like I'll go back to being a child of an immigrant and a child of a household of melanin. We were told not to speak. I was told you need to not speak unless you're spoken to. And so much of my childhood and teenage years is about do what you're supposed to do, don't complain about it, get it done, and that's it. And so we don't have the agency or the language as adults to say, actually, no, this is what I need. This is what I demand. And this is the value that I provide. And this is what I think is fair. When you're a child and you're not given those those words and you're not given opportunities to exercise that, as an adult, it's incredibly uncomfortable. And you have to, it's just like working out. You have to practice it.
It's a new skill that you have to learn as an adult when you should have learned it by now, because now you're at a disadvantage in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I think part of the difficulty for me early on was my hesitance to talk to other people about money. We don't talk about money. Like, you just don't. And now it's like, hey, let's talk about it. And I think that's part of, the conversation, is that the lack of information, and, you have to educate yourself. Like, you want to go into something where you're advocating for yourself, like, you have to arm yourself. And that's our responsibility. You have to know what your skills are, where your gaps are, what you offer. And I had to look into, like, what is even market? So there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's never comfortable. But yeah, you just learn.
Yeah. Talk to me about the idea of seeking wise counsel. You talked about getting advice from folks. How has that influenced your journey in negotiation and your career and other elements?
So early on, I found a mentor in someone who was working in corporate America at Wachovia at the time, and she's still my mentor to this day. And it's interesting because her daughter is my mentee now. She's at Dartmouth. She's in college, and kind of sort of come full circle. But I met her through, one of these like college internship programs. And I think the key is that when you find somebody that's sort of, you have a kinship with, who understands you, she's a woman of color, I had to make it a point to like reach out to her on a regular basis and to seek counsel. And she was very responsive and kind of checked in with me along the way. I've known her since I was like 19 years old. And so I would check in with her, and she's, been so generous with her time. And the key to that sort of relationship, particularly a mentor-mentee relationship, is you have to really be vulnerable and tell this person, like, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm struggling with. And if you're not tuned into that, it's hard to have a trusting mentor-mentee relationship. So the first thing I think is like establishing that, finding somebody, and it doesn't have to be somebody in your field. It doesn't have to be somebody older than you. It could be somebody that, just has a little bit more experience in the field that you want to be in. But, that's important. Another thing that's key, I think, particularly for women and their careers, is that you have to know the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor is somebody who's, no matter what, you can go to, if it's personal, if it's your relationship, if it's your job, whatever. Sponsor is somebody who, for your career, can be in rooms where you're not. And when they're in those rooms, are happy to speak your name and happy to pull up a chair to bring you in. Those are people with access in places that we don't. And those folks, sponsors, tend to not look like us. And that's where I've had to really push myself, because I'm not hanging out with Bob after work. Like, that's not like my,
not your jam.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Finding sponsors is much more challenging than finding mentors. Luckily, in corporate America, particularly in the legal field, in-house counsel, there's more women. You'll find more women at law firms. It's more challenging. But again, that's like on us to seek that out. And that's been a challenge. It's been a difficult time in the financial field. the pandemic for sure. And we're
Mm-hmm.
not in person most of the time with folks. So forging those relationships are so much harder. Maintaining them is so much harder. But
Mm-hmm.
it's an investment in yourself, and if you're not going to do it, nobody is. So again, it's uncomfortable, but
Right.
getting into, hey, can I have, you know, 30 minutes for coffee to
Mm-hmm.
someone who's 2, 3, 4 levels ahead of you and saying, let's, create a connection. It's like dating. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you have to put
Yeah.
yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. But those two things, mentors and sponsors, it's critical.
Mm-hmm.
Navigating particularly the corporate world for women and women of color, it's a minefield and it's sensitive. And as much as I think we've come a long way, particularly in corporate America, in terms of championing diversity,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a long, long way to go.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Talk to me more about that, like the perspective of that corporate landscape, as because you exist at a lot of intersections, right? You're a woman,
Yeah.
you're a person of color, you're an immigrant. Like, how do all of you're a parent, you're a parent of biracial black presenting children. Like how
You're like, all these things, all the things,
all
all
of
the
these
things.
things, right? And that intersectionality matters, right? You're an ally
Yeah,
for the black community.
for
Like there's
sure.
so many things. Like how does your intersectionality show up in your workplace, and what have been some really tough moments at work when it comes to managing those different intersectionalities?
So the first thing is, no matter what, there's a pressure that exists to be excellent at
Mm-hmm.
all times. And that's something that it's inherent, it's there, and we can't escape it. As much as we want to rebel against it, like to be
Right.
successful, we have to lean into it. The key
We
thing
can't
to
just
all
be
the
mediocre.
yeah,
Like why
no,
we gotta
no,
be twice as
no,
good?
you
Can't
can't
we
be
just be
perfect.
average?
You can't be average. It's not allowed.
Oh, America.
It's like those security gates at TSA.
Hmm.
Is gonna go off if you're basic. They're like,
Right.
yeah, no, it's there, and you have to get comfortable with it. And the key is to be able to balance that pressure with your own needs and your own happiness.
That
It's
Zeus. I'm
it's
like trying to
all
peek, trying to
yeah,
peek. Like
yeah, and it all intersects. And how that shows up is I have to show up as my best self at work.
yeah.
There is no there's no excuse letter for a sick kid or, a tough day at home in your
Mm.
relationship. So for me to be my best self, to show up at work, means I have to, when I'm not at work, be intentional about making sure that I'm good. And that's true too for being a parent, and that's true too for being a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, First thing when I show up to work is I know and accept the fact that I'm not just representing myself. And it's something that I've had to learn to embrace over time.
Mm.
Because sometimes you just don't want to be that,
Yeah.
but 99.9% of the time, I'm the only female on the call. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
only female attorney. I'm the only person of color,
Mm-hmm.
or both.
Mm-hmm.
So, so much of the first few years of this job and even at the firm is just like proving yourself that you can be trusted, that you know what you're talking about and you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is enveloped in like doing good work and delivering, and sometimes over delivering when you have to. But it's glaring, that sort of lack of
Yeah.
diversity in the corporate world. It's gotten a lot better, to be honest. And at least for the company that I work for, there's intentionality when it comes to hiring, when it comes to putting board members in seats, when it comes to who's leading diversity calls and initiatives. But it's still a long way to go. And for me, where I'm comfortable at is, I'm part of a diversity panel on anti-racism at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just part of it, I'm very vocal about it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably too vocal. I told my manager, I was like, you might be hearing from people because...
That reminds me, I have a podcast to send you that I listened to this morning that you will probably want to share with your group.
Yes, please do. Because what I recognize is that there's still privilege in being an Asian woman versus being an African-American woman. So on these panels, I noticed that my colleagues who are African-American are very sometimes reserved or very careful about their verbiage and how they deliver the message. And it's very like kid glove. Yeah. And I understand it. I understand where it's coming from and I understand the intent. So then I step in. You remember that skit, Key and Peele, where he's the Obama translator?
Yeah. So
I'm the translator.
Yep. I see that for you.
So, when my coworker's done talking, I'm like, palms down. Lativia, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
What she meant to say was, and that's the role that I've, been comfortable playing in terms of those conversations at work. It's nerve-wracking. It's scary. Yeah. I worry that, is this going to impact the people, how they perceive me at work? But after this last presidency, Trump came into office when Liam was born. And it changed me to my core. And I just can't,
in summary, we can't.
Yeah, in summary, I just cannot. And so I was like, look, I'm either going to show up and be present and be my authentic self, or I'm not. Yeah. And if that's the contribution that I can make, as little as it is, as a woman of color, as a parent of Black kids, in the workplace, then, I'll step into that. But the thing about that too is like, I've created a relationship with the people with whom I've worked where they know how genuine I am about those issues and like what that means. And that requires me sharing with them, which I've not been comfortable with in the past. I've always sort of been, work is work and my personal life is my personal life, and there is no overlap. Yeah. I think I've gotten to the point where, that's not wholly possible. And that whatever that shows up as, like, I'm gonna have to accept it. I'm still very much like aware of how I show up, how I present, but I've gotten more comfortable over time with like really being vocal about what I'm passionate about.
I want to dig into like self-care, because I know sometimes because obviously I worked in corporate for a while, on and off in my entrepreneurial journey. And it can be exhausting, like the pressure of being that monolith and like always having to be on and always having to like double, triple, quadruple check to make sure that your work is polished and perfect, because if it's not, it reflects poorly on your whole community and everyone that looks like you. It can be exhausting. So like what are some things that you do to have more pleasure and ease and abundance in your life?
So the first thing I'll say that I've learned over time is you can't create abundance and ease if you don't tune into where things are lacking. You have to tune into and really listen to like where the scarcity is in your life to be able to like be intentional about where to bring in ease and where to bring in abundance. So for me, that entails like really looking at myself and being like, where in my life do I need help at this moment? Like where am I feeling the exhaustion at this moment? Because it changes all the time. Sometimes, you know, work is going great, but like both kids are sick. Or, you know, work is incredibly busy and exhausting. And at the same time, like the kids are great, but then like I haven't seen my man in 3 weeks, and like that's suffering. So it's a constant sort of stage. It's a constant thing of, okay, like let me look at what's going on and where I'm feeling the burden and where I'm feeling like I need to focus. For me personally, there are certain rituals that I have to do to feel like I'm okay, like I'm good. I have to check in with my girlfriends. And I realize this is a luxury and a privilege, but I do a massage every month, sometimes more than one if I can. And we're lucky because we have such a great village of grandparents and family members and friends. Mal and I, every year without fail, we go on a trip by ourselves, at least 5 days. Sometimes if we can manage, we'll do 2 trips, even if one is short. All of that requires me to reach out to people to help me. And that is not a comfortable thing for me to do. It's super, super hard. I feel guilty when I do it. I feel like I am somehow not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like in my mind, I'm like, no, you're supposed to be with your kids 24/7. Like, no, you're supposed to be working. If an email comes in at 8 p.m., you know, you should be answering that email versus putting your kid to bed. Like, there's this constant...
Those shoulds will...
Yes! There's this constant, you know, there's this constant dialogue in the back of my mind telling me where I'm failing, like to do something. And so much of creating ease in my life is learning how to like turn that off or at least mute it a little bit. Because otherwise I can't do what I need to do. Like I know for a fact I can't be the parent that I want to be if I'm exhausted and I can't focus. I had a moment where work was okay. My relationship, we were having a tough time and I was stressed out. And I remember Liam in the morning, he's basically a 16-year-old in a 5-year-old's body. He's not a morning person. And so I have to like really drag him through the morning routine and drag him through brushing his teeth and getting dressed. And normally it's fine, but I was having a tough time. And I remember one morning screaming at him, like screaming, angry, like get your ish together to like a 4-year-old. And he looked at me, Tivi, like I lost my mind. He looked at me like, I don't know who you are. And what switched it for me was there was a look of fear in his eyes that I'd never seen before. And I remember as a child, and you could probably relate, my parents being like, you need to be afraid of me. Like you need to fear me. And that's not something that I want in my child. And I just looked at him in the face and immediately I was like, okay, like I need a break. I called Mal's mom and I was like, I need you to take the kids because I am struggling. And I remember feeling so emotional about it. Because it was a realization of like, I am turning into somebody that I don't want to be. Because
and it's
I
easy
remember
to go down that path because sometimes
sometimes
it's modeled for you in various ways, and it's easy to like just pick up that habit and keep carrying it into the next generation.
Because you do get results in terms of parenting with fear.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
get them to behave the way you want with fear. And it's worked. It's worked for me, like having
Worked for
that
me.
fear. It worked for all
Right.
of us. And so it's easy to go down that path, but I just remember that moment so vividly.
Yeah.
And thinking to myself, okay, this is a clear example of I'm not myself. I'm not, I haven't slept. I'm not myself. I haven't eaten. Like, I need to get help from somebody. And Mal's been really great about that. Like, anytime he's like, look, you're sounding not yourself. Like, have you called my mom? Have you called your mom? Like, can you see if, Liam can have a sleepover with his friend? Like, he is very much a proponent because he's not here most of the time. So he can't carry that load physically because he's a surgeon who's, in Chapel Hill. And so I think that's important too, is like having a partner who's like, listen, like, I see you struggling and you have to tell me. He, the communication has been key. He's basically like, tell me what you need. And you need people in your life who will say to you, you need to say what you need. It's okay to vocalize what you need. And again, that goes back to me as a kid being told, like, don't say it.
Exactly.
Don't complain.
Exactly.
I don't care. I heard I don't care a lot.
It's super damaging. Yeah. I mean, I literally, right before we got on recording, I was on a call with my team, and I had this moment where I just had to tell them, like, look, I'm exhausted. Like, I gotta be real with y'all. Like, I'm exhausted. I didn't say it in these words, but I'm at a point where, like, right now, this moment, the past couple weeks have been really tough, where I love my business, but I do not like my business. And I said, if we keep going down this path, like, I won't survive. Like, this business won't survive because I will not be here. And like, Mal is your support system, and your parents and his parents and all of the people that y'all have around y'all. Like, you need, like you said, you gotta have that support system, and you yourself have to be comfortable enough being vulnerable to ask for that support. Like, life doesn't, and this is something I had a realization of this weekend when I was like super sick, vomiting on the toilet, and all I could think about was my to-do list.
Right.
And I had this moment where I was like, yo, living life is not you working yourself until you absolutely can't work anymore. Like,
yes, but
that's
so
not it.
Much of our childhood and honestly, like, our teenage years is about powering through. Our measure of success is like, how much adversity can you overcome and how well can you do it? You know, without complaining.
Oh my gosh.
It's not just about success. It's about how hard was it? How difficult? What kind of barriers have you had to go through? Like, and we pat ourselves on the back for that. And the struggle of getting out of that mindset is real. And it takes so much therapy and so much time and so much journaling and so much thinking about it. And it takes so much to, like, unlearn these things that we've been taught that, perpetuate our idea of, like, what we should be doing, what we're supposed to be doing. And that resonates with me. I love X, but I don't like Y. That's true for, sometimes it's true for my kids. I love you. I don't like you right now.
Right.
Like, for my partner, I love you. I don't like the situation that we're in. Your work, your career, but like, when I think the key for us is when we get to those places, like learning how to ask for help and take action. And not just being
action.
Yes, not being complacent about our happiness. I think a key thing that I learned, and I didn't really fully learn it and accept it until I was in my 30s, was like, I am fully responsible for my own happiness. 100%, not 99.9%, not
right.
0.1 is my significant other and 0.2 is my kids. Like, no, 100% is me.
Yep.
And it's scary, but also like weirdly empowering. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm
Mm-hmm.
responsible for how I feel, then I can change
Yes.
my environment and my situation and my mindset and my body and whatever.
Yeah.
So,
It's
you know,
super empowered. Like that same effort that we put into like jumping over all these hurdles and getting through
yes, and
all
beating
like,
ourselves up.
okay, we can put that into making ourselves happy. And then one of the things
Yes.
that I tell my team is that discomfort is data. So don't get it twisted. Like I'll complain about some stuff, but I'm actually grateful for that discomfort because that's data that I can act on. Something is not right. It's not just
Yes.
something isn't right and I have to sit in it and just be uncomfortable. Like that was the pattern I learned in childhood where I was in a situation where I felt controlled and I really couldn't do much about that. I'm no longer that child. My discomfort, I can act on that discomfort to change my situation now.
Yeah. I think so much of our instinct and our learned behavior is to ignore it. Mm-hmm. And it's gotten, I'll be honest, like sometimes ignoring it is comfortable. Like
it's easy for sure.
Easier to just ignore it and like, you know, not have to, you know, you've said it before, decision fatigue is real. And as an entrepreneur, that's your day-to-day 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, an attorney, that's all I do is decision making, making judgment calls, assessing risk and like what that means. And it is hard to turn that off when it comes to like your life. Yeah. Like assessing risk and like analyzing everything and like doing all that. And it's such a learning process. And at 38 now, since I'm turning 38 tomorrow.
As of this filming.
There's a lot of comfort in knowing that it's okay that I haven't figured it all out. Because that was my main hang up with having children is like, I'm like, but I haven't figured it out. But like, I haven't maxed out my therapy hours for my life. Like, but I haven't like, but I don't know, you know, but Mal, you know, my significant other is still going through medical school, but like, and it's never gonna be perfect.
Just had
it's
this
never gonna be the quote unquote right time.
Yeah.
It's never gonna be, you know, when is it gonna be easier? You know, I had to just...
And you won't have it figured it out because your child, like you could read every book on parenting there is. Your child will be unique and specific to you.
Let me tell you something. When the truth of that is it's to the core true, they come out how they are. They are their own people. And there's a certain level of freedom that you achieve when you realize that as a parent, that like this human being, my job is just to be the gardener and flower and like allow you to flower however you're going to bloom and like give you all the sun and all the rain. But like, you are who you are. Liam is who he is. Charlotte is
who she is.
A savage.
I love those kids, man.
Liam is who, like, you know, there's a certain level of freedom. Like, I'm like, I can just do my best. Because you know me, can you imagine me pregnant for the first time? Like, I was looking at articles about, you know, high anxiety people and how that affects your embryo. And like, you know, children of trauma.
See my future.
And like, how do you know, like all of these things. Like, I'm trying to figure out.
You bookmark those articles because you know I'm gonna need them.
I just was like, let me learn how to like not F up my kid. But like at the end of the day, we have to go on this journey with them and do our best and understand that like, okay, I'm lucky enough that when I need help, like I have people and I have friends and I have you all and I have, you know, a partner and like leveraging that. Like everybody has their strengths. Mal's mom is a veteran nurse. So when she's like, hey, you haven't slept in a couple of days and your kid still has a fever, let me have them overnight. in my mind, I'm like, oh, but I really need to be the one. But also, I'm like, but you're a nurse.
She's a nurse.
You are way more equipped to handle a feverish child than I am.
Also, she's asking, like,
yes,
give me the child. You need rest. We know you need sleep in order to live. Yes,
exactly. And be your better self when it's time, when it's time to take up the mantle again. And that's the thing. Like, everybody has strengths, and like you have to leverage that. And I know my strengths, but there are certain things like that's just not my wheelhouse. Like that, I have to accept that. Like, I am not baking cookies for the bake sale at school. That's not.
We can run the Harris Teeter real quick.
That problem. And that's okay. I don't have to be everything to everybody. Like that's totally fine.
The word. Because you have to be everything to yourself. Like, you can't. You are all you have.
Yes.
Like, period. And then you have to be able to have enough to give other people. But if you're constantly depleting yourself, you won't have anything to give.
Anything else to give? Yeah, that's Auntie Oprah's mantra, is that you have to fill your cup first. Because if you have an empty cup, there's nothing to give. Which is, so it's true, but also counterintuitive to like what I learned, in the Filipino culture, and a lot of it's the mom's job is to be everything.
Yeah.
And my parents' generation is very much that sort of old school mentality of like, you need to be able to do it all, like cook dinner, clean the house, get the kids, and also work. And I just can't.
Yeah.
I physically can't do it. And I think,
and I would actually, let's change our language around that. Like, I won't. Like, it's okay. It's okay for us to be like, no, it's not that I can't, like I'm incapable. I can do anything, but I'm not going to do everything. So
yes. And not carrying so much guilt about it. I've communicated to you very, very candidly about my guilt. But honestly, just having people that I'm like, I feel guilty about it. Yeah. And girlfriends immediately being like, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
I think it's natural to feel good, especially in the society that we live in. It's natural to understand like how you feel that way, but you don't have to. Yeah.
Feel it and let it go. You need people who are around you and know you to say like, it's okay. That's not your thing. I think I envy women and people who find joy in cooking. I do not. It stresses me out.
Really? And you always cook for me every time I come over.
I'm happy to do it for like hosting. I think hosting I like. But like every day I have to come up with something to feed my kids, like every day. Like not 5 days, but like every day. I can't do it.
Here's the thing. This is something I learned about. I had a breakthrough moment when I thought about washing my car. I kept thinking, I should wash my car. I should wash my car. I really need to wash my car. I really need to wash my car. And then I had this moment where it was like, no, you want your car washed.
Washed.
You don't want to do it.
That's a different thing. You want a task accomplished.
Exactly. Your kids need to eat every day.
Yeah,
but
girl.
Do you have to do it? And also the world we live in nowadays is completely different than the world that our parents grew up in, that our grandparents grew up in. Yeah. Like our access to jobs, to capital, like we have way more access to economic means and information and a whole lot of other things that our parents and grandparents didn't have. And so when we think about like what life looked like for them, maybe it made more sense that they were cooking and taking care of a house. You're right.
Yeah, context is important. And I think it's we have to level set in terms of expectations, but also what's real. Like what are real expectations? Who is telling you that you need to be making home cooked organic meals for your kids every day? That's in here. Like nobody's in my house being like, you need to be doing this. It's this ingrained sort of internalized judgment that may or may not even exist. you know? So it's definitely like at some point you got to get comfortable with shaping what your reality is that fits you and your needs.
And like you said, there's power in that. Like if we all realize
agency, yes,
we going back to our conversation, we felt like we didn't have agency as kids. Like we have so much agency as adults, and that's super freeing.
Yeah, and I think it is important to. I do think there's a learning curve of discomfort with that, because I think sometimes it is overwhelming to be like, oh, like I'm responsible for two human beings outside of myself, and like two dogs outside of myself, and a household, and all of that, and plus all of my stuff. So yeah, that gets overwhelming. And I do think, I told you, like, oh, I think I have the blues, like I might be having birthday blues and stuff like that. I think looking into it and really tuning into those feelings, so much of moments of feeling overwhelmed for me is that realization of like, there is no safety net. Like I'm responsible. Like, just like for you and your business, like the buck stops here. This is it.
Yeah.
And when you really fully comprehend what that means, it's super overwhelming, and it takes time. But so much of my growth has been affirmations from other women, quite frankly, of like, I'm going through the same exact thing, and you shouldn't feel, X, Y, or Z about the decision that you made that was best for you. Or, hey, like that boundary that you set, you shouldn't feel guilty about that, because that's important for your well-being, and you shouldn't have to explain yourself.
Right.
Those affirmations from people that have gone through the same thing or are going through the same thing is super critical. But you can only get there by being honest and vulnerable with other people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've learned to do. And, so grateful for like you and our group of friends and my girlfriends here in Charlotte and college girlfriends, because that, even like having not seen each other, like we see each other like once or twice a year, sometimes more, but like having that connection with people that you have kinship with, that you genuinely feel has your best interest at heart. It's honestly what's gotten me through like the most difficult times, or even like just a slightly difficult time for one day of the week. Like, you need that. And that's the community of women. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, I'm grateful for you. We've been through the mud together. We've been
probably
through a lot.
A 6-hour podcast about history and love and loss and
child, don't even get me started.
All the things. all the things. We know where the skeletons are buried.
Honey. Okay.
I'll be there with a trash bag and luminol, girl.
Okay, I'll bring the bleach. Matter of fact, we're just gonna rip this floor right on up.
Yes.
Install a new one. But seriously, super appreciative of you. And I think what you said about, your tribe and community is so essential. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to convene conversations like this, is because I think that there's power in other women, non-binary folks, even men in a lot of ways, like just hearing other people saying, hey, yeah, I'm dealing with this too. And this shit is tough. And you'll get through it. Here are some of the tools that I use on my journey. So thank you for being so vulnerable today.
You're welcome. I think as women, we have this, particularly women of color, there's this image of us out there, of like toughness and, backbone, and but also being tough on each other, being hard on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to see the narrative changing a little bit around women of color and the communities that we've created around each other and uplifting each other, because so much of that narrative, I think, doesn't even come from women of color. It's what society has created in terms of an image. And so much of that vision of like strength and like, you know, carry people on your back and like you can change a man and you know, like saving people, like no, like we save ourselves and we save, you know, we can empower each other and we can, you know, give each other the space and grace and the language to be more. And that kind of conversation being public is super critical, particularly the idea that like, oh, women can, like, we can do it all, we can have the family and the dog and the husband and the career and stuff. Like, yeah, we can, but it takes a whole lot of people to do it, you know, and it's okay. Like, and it's not all gonna be perfect at the same time. Like, I've gotten comfortable with that. Like, something, you know, when something's going great, some aspect may be not so great, but like, that's okay. It's gonna be fine.
Also, I want us all to remember, like, we don't get a gold star for running ourselves into the ground and not asking for help. Actually, that causes a lot of diseases and stress and all of these different things. So yeah, like, you can have it all whatever that looks like, but like you said, it's not always going to be perfect all at the same time. And then you will get help. Like, wouldn't you rather have it all and feel spacious and it feel easeful most days rather than being stressed all the time?
That's the key. And a lot of it for me, particularly having so much of that focus comes from like having kids, because there is no, like, there's no off button for parenting. Even when, you know, we're on a trip or like they're with grandparents and stuff, like, you're always kind of on. So I've had to be hyper focused on like, how much time do I have and how can I make the most out of it. So for me, like, you know, I love books. I love a good like rom-com. I love a good mystery thriller. I love a good historical fiction. But like, consumption of books had to change for me. I couldn't have a book, paper book, or even a Kindle, because like, I'm running around 90% of the time. So I was like, all right, I don't really like listening to things, but like, I was like, let me try Audible, let me try Libby, and like, I can listen to 2 hours of a book while I'm in carpool, while, you know, I'm picking up my kid, or while he's in swim class and I have 30 minutes and I can just listen to it, or an hour before bed. That requires an understanding that like, okay, I have to switch. I know what I enjoy, but I have to figure out another way to do it. And that takes effort. And I think that's the key. Like, for you to really shape a life that you're content with and that you find joy in, you have to make some compromises, but with the goal of, this is something that fulfills me. So I love a good massage. Do I have one day a month where I have 12 hours to go to the spa? No, but I can find an hour. I can find an hour and a half to like have a, you know, a quick 1 hour massage. Like, that's the sort of thing. Like, it might not look exactly how you envisioned, but there's ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish for yourself and nobody else. And that's fine. It could be something that I find joy in and nobody else finds joy in. But I'm going to invest in that time for myself. And that's just, you know, again, I was like, oh, am I doing too much? Am I spending too much money on this? And I'm like, says who?
Says who? You make all of this pop, like,
you know, and
that's what you're investing in.
And the thing is, like, I don't find joy in like designer bags. Like, I know people who love that and who invest in that. That's not something that like brings me a lot of joy, but you know what does bring me a lot of joy is like good food. So like I'll drop some food, I'll drop some money on some fine dining and some cocktails. Like, I won't feel guilty about that. You know, like, that's the kind of thing. Like, we have to stop engaging with expectations and what success looks like and what happiness looks like based on what's out there.
Yeah.
Like, find it in where you're at. And where you're at might be like, I find joy in my free audiobook this week. Like, that's okay. You know?
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, I think we, particularly women who have demanding careers that take a lot of hours and attention, as much intention and energy as you put into that meeting, that 1 hour meeting, you put that into yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Gems. Great advice for folks listening. Liana, obviously, we talk all the time. I could talk to you all day. Okay.
We have.
Yeah. I feel like folks have a lot of great takeaways from this episode. I definitely tried to take some notes. But for folks who want to keep up with you, where can they find you online?
I am on LinkedIn, Liana Rebollo, and I am on Instagram. It is public, but it's mostly babies and dogs. So
it's real cute.
If you're into that, Adventures of 10 2 is my Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've definitely enjoyed our chat.
Me too.
And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I always have a great time whenever Liana and I connect. A couple things that stood out to me in this episode that we talked about. One, embracing your agency as an adult and realizing that you have a lot more power and control over your happiness and your life and how your life looks than maybe you think. Number two, leaning into discomfort and all the different ways that can show up in your life and how you can use that leaning into that discomfort to create new opportunities for yourself, to advocate for yourself, and just overall improve what things look like for you. And then thirdly, I love what Liana talked about being an advocate, an ally, a mentor, all the things in corporate America where sometimes we can be one of a few or just one. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, I'm Tivi Jones, founder and CEO of Hey Awesome Girl, the creative studio, recording from my home office. As a reminder, Hey Awesome Girl's social mission is to celebrate and empower women, especially women of color. We believe digital entrepreneurship is a resource to increase confidence, close racial and gender wealth gaps, and provide a means of freedom for women all over the world. As I like to say, empowered women empower women. And that is exactly what we're trying to achieve with this show. I hope you follow, like, subscribe on all the channels where you can find our show. And until the next episode, please visit heyawesomegirl.com/show to sign up for our email list, get some extra goodies and resources from us. And then also make sure you check out our Had Swag shop. I will see you next time. So it's me again, just jumping back on to share a special resource with you. So I know I talk a lot about our pleasure, ease, and abundance framework that we use at Hey Awesome Girl, but maybe you aren't quite sure what that means and how you can incorporate that into your life. Well, we have a free resource for you that can help with that. It's our Pleasure, Ease, and Abundance playbook. In this playbook, I outline the 9 elements of pleasure, ease, and abundance you need to consider to help you create a life that is fun, fabulous, and free. I walk you through journal prompts, I share resources, and give you some actionable steps you can take to get you further away from stress, exhaustion, and being broke. To download this free playbook, go to heyawesomegirl.com/framework, enter your email address, and we'll send it right over to you. That's heyawesomegirl.com/framework to download your free playbook today.